As the clock struck midnight on January 5th, 1890, America stood at the threshold of a new decade, a nation pulsing with the raw energy of the Gilded Age. Factories hummed across the industrial heartland, railroads snaked through untamed landscapes, and waves of immigrants poured in, chasing the promise of prosperity. That very day, Ellis Island opened its doors in New York Harbor, becoming the gateway for millions seeking a new life. Over 500,000 souls would pass through in the first year alone, their stories weaving into the fabric of a country that seemed boundless. But even as dreams swelled, subtle cracks appeared in the foundation of this expansive vision. By early summer, the results of the 11th census painted a startling picture. On June 2nd, the Bureau of the Census announced that the United States population had surged to nearly 63 million, a 25% leap from a decade earlier. More profoundly, Superintendent of the Census Robert Porter declared the American frontier officially closed. No longer could settlers push westward into vast, unsettled lands. The wild expanse that had defined the nation's identity was mapped, measured, and tamed. This revelation hit like a thunderclap. For pioneers, ranchers, and dreamers, it signaled the end of an era of infinite possibility. From the farms of the Midwest to the mining camps of the Rockies, Americans grappled with what it meant to be a people without a horizon. The census, processed with innovative punch card machines by Herman Hollerith, not only tallied numbers, but hinted at a technological future, foreshadowing the data-driven world to come. Yet expansion did not halt entirely. In July, the nation grew westward once more. On the 3rd, Idaho joined as the 43rd state, its rugged mountains and silver mines adding to the Union's mosaic of territories turned sovereign. Just a week later, on July 10th, Wyoming followed as the 44th state, blazing a trail in more ways than one. Wyoming's constitution enshrined women's suffrage, granting full voting rights to women, a radical step that echoed the growing clamor for equality. While the East Coast debated reforms in smoke-filled parlors, Wyoming's plains became a proving ground for democracy, influencing suffragists nationwide and planting seeds for the 19th Amendment decades later. Congress, under President Benjamin Harrison, turned its gaze to the economy that summer, enacting laws that would ripple through boardrooms and barnyards alike. On July 2nd, the Sherman Antitrust Act became law, a bold strike against the monopolies devouring competition. Trusts like John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled entire industries, squeezing out small businesses and driving up prices. Sponsored by Senator John Sherman, the act declared such combinations illegal, aiming to restore fair play in a market warped by tycoons. Though enforcement would prove tricky in the years ahead, it marked America's first federal foray into regulating big business, a response to the growing inequality that pitted laborers against lords of industry. Silver miners and farmers, battered by falling crop prices, found partial relief 12 days later with the Sherman Silver Purchase Act. The government committed to buying 4.5 million ounces of silver monthly to mint coins, bolstering the money supply and easing debts for agrarian folk. It was a concession to the populist movement rising in the heartland, where wheat barons and debt-ridden homesteaders railed against gold standard elites. But this silver lifeline also sowed seeds of instability, inflating currency and straining federal reserves, a precursor to the Panic of 1893 that would plunge the nation into depression. As autumn leaves turned in October, two landmark measures reshaped trade and wilderness. The McKinley Tariff Act, named for Ohio Congressman William McKinley, jacked up duties on imports to nearly 50%, shielding American manufacturers from foreign competition. Factories in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia cheered the protection, but consumers grumbled at higher prices for everything from woolen suits to tinware. From the USA's vantage, it fortified industrial might against European rivals, yet it strained relations with trading partners and fueled debates over free markets versus national self-sufficiency. On the same day, October 1st, a quieter revolution unfolded in California's Sierra Nevada. At the urging of naturalist John Muir, Congress established Yosemite National Park, the third in the nation after Yellowstone and Sequoia. Towering granite cliffs, thundering waterfalls, and ancient sequoias were set aside for posterity, a testament to a budding conservation ethic. Muir's eloquent pleas had swayed lawmakers, arguing that these wonders belong not to loggers or miners, but to all Americans. In an era of relentless exploitation, Yosemite symbolized a pivot towards stewardship, inspiring future presidents like Theodore Roosevelt and the national park system we cherish today. Amid these strides, flickers of joy lit the cultural landscape. On November 27th at West Point, the United States Military Academy hosted the United States Naval Academy for the inaugural Army-Navy football game. A crowd of 5,000 watched the cadets clash in a muddy 24-0 rout for Navy, birthing a rivalry that would become a Thanksgiving tradition. It was more than sport. It embodied the martial spirit of a nation eyeing global horizons, where young officers trained for duties beyond domestic borders. But 1890's shadow side loomed largest in the Great Plains, where the ghost dance movement swept Native American tribes. Rooted in Paiute prophet Wovoka's visions of renewal, the dance promised to restore the buffalo herds and banish white settlers, a desperate bid for cultural survival amid broken treaties and shrinking reservations. Tensions boiled over on December 15th, when Lakota leader Sitting Bull, the Hunkpapa chief who had routed Custer at Little Bighorn, was killed during an arrest attempt on the Standing Rock Reservation. Federal agents feared his influence over the dancers. In the chaos, gunfire claimed his life and 6 others. Sitting Bull's death reverberated as a martyrdom, galvanizing resistance and exposing the fragility of peace. 2 weeks later, on December 29th, tragedy culminated at Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. The 7th Cavalry, still smarting from Little Bighorn, disarmed a band of 350 Miniconjou and Hunkpapa Lakota under Chief Bigfoot, who had surrendered amid a harsh winter. As warriors gathered weapons, a shot rang out, perhaps accidental, and panic ensued. Hotchkiss guns raked the camp from afar, slaughtering men, women, and children in a snow-swept valley. Over 250 native people lay dead, their frozen bodies later buried in a mass grave. 25 soldiers perished, many by friendly fire. The massacre, the deadliest in American history against native peoples, effectively crushed the ghost dance and marked the end of major armed resistance in the Indian Wars. From the USA's perspective, it was portrayed as a necessary pacification, but it stained the nation's conscience, fueling later reforms like the Dawes Act's revisions and the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. Across the Atlantic, the world intruded subtly but insistently. The Russian flu pandemic, which had ravaged Europe since 1889, reached American shores with ferocity, claiming thousands in cities like New York and Chicago. Quarantines clogged ports and hospitals overflowed, underscoring the perils of global connectivity even before airplanes. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm II's saber-rattling strained ties with Britain, while colonial scrambles in Africa by France and Britain prompted American diplomats to ponder their own imperial ambitions. The Samoa crisis, resolved earlier that year with tripartite control shared among the USA, Germany, and Britain, hinted at emerging great power rivalries, nudging the US Navy toward modernization under Alfred Thayer Mahan's influential writings. As 1890 faded into twilight, America reflected on a year of triumphs and heartaches. New states and parks celebrated growth. Antitrust laws and tariffs grappled with power's perils, while Wounded Knee mourned the cost of conquest. Immigrants streamed in, the frontier closed, and the nation edged toward a more interconnected world. These threads wove a tapestry of transition, setting the stage for the turbulent teens of the 20th century. A reminder that progress often walks hand in hand with profound loss.